Operation Overlord, also known as D-Day, was an Allied invasion of German-occupied northern France on June 6, 1944. This invasion, combined with Operation Dragoon, was an Allied attempt to reclaim France from German occupation. A combined Allied force of about 156,000 U.S., British, Canadian, and Free French forces invaded Normandy at 5 beachheads under the commands of Supreme Allied Commander Dwight Eisenhower, British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, and U.S. General Omar Bradley. During the invasion, the Allied forces encountered a German force of about 10,000 troops under the commands of Field Marshals Gert von Rundstedt and Erwin Rommel. The 5 beachheads invaded by the Allied forces at Normandy are as follows. Utah was the first of 2 beaches invaded by the U.S. First Army, and the westernmost beach in the entire invasion. Led by Teddy Roosevelt, Jr., this invasion consisted of more than 24,000 ground forces and paratroopers. By the end of the day, the U.S. was successful in capturing the beachhead with little resistance, suffering under 200 casualties. Omaha was the second of 2 beaches invaded by the U.S. First Army. Led by General Omar Bradley, this invasion consisted of around 35,000 ground forces. Here, the U.S. faced heavy German resistance but was successful in capturing the beachhead, suffering around 2,000 casualties. Gold was the first of 3 beaches invaded by the British Second Army. Led by Douglas Alexander Graham, this invasion consisted of around 25,000 British infantry troops and commandos. The British were successful in capturing the beachhead, suffering fewer than 1,000 casualties. Juneau was the second of 3 beaches invaded by the British Second Army. Led by John Crocker and R.F.L. Keller, this invasion consisted of a combined Canadian infantry and British commando unit of about 22,000 troops. During the invasion, they encountered heavy German resistance but eventually succeeded in capturing the beachhead, suffering less than 1,000 casualties. Sword was the third of 3 beaches invaded by the British Second Army and was the easternmost beach invaded. Led once again by John Crocker as well as Thomas Renier, this invasion consisted of around 30,000 British infantry troops, British commandos, and Free French commandos. They succeeded in capturing the beachhead, suffering less than 700 casualties, and were successful in linking with the Canadians at Juneau. As a result of Operation Overlord and Operation Dragoon, the Allies were successful in invading and capturing France. A few months later, the Allies would advance towards the German border, culminating in the Battle of the Bulge. This diverted Hitler's attention away from the east, allowing for the Soviet invasion of Berlin and ultimately the German surrender in Europe.